What's going on? It is Wednesday. It's 11 o'clock Eastern here in New York. And this is not a green screen. It's Coffee with Creators here at Adorama, 42 West 18th Street. You guys know that these chairs are always here for you. This chat is always here for you. Jonny, not always here, but we got him here as a special guest. We're going to get into who Jonny Edward is in a minute. But first, I want to say a big thank you to Flashpoint for sponsoring this. If you guys don't know, Flashpoint is the house brand here at Adorama, and it is affordable. It's got a massive lineup, options for any type of setup you want to do, any type of kit you want to grow, anything you're trying to get as far as a tool and just being able to actually grow as a photographer. Check out Flashpoint. Links down below. I guarantee you most of you are very familiar with Flashpoint already, and you're going to be shooting later with a bunch of Flashpoint gear at 5 o'clock right here on the Events channel, not this channel, the Events channel. Ooh, I feel like I'm rusty on one part of this every time. But thanks, Flashpoint. I also want to give a quick thank you to, Tenba. So Tenba has been supporting the show by giving this specific bag, which actually has a custom Coffee with Creators metal engraved badge on it, which is awesome. So one day it'll be worth money. I'll do my best to make it worth money, Jonny. I swear to God. But Tenba, thank you so much for supporting this. And don't forget, since 1977, they've been in this industry. And if you've been a photographer in this industry, you probably had a Tenba bag. But it was started by a photographer right here in New York, and it's still going today. So check out Tenba. And lastly, Gotham Roasters for hooking us up. Thank you so much. Cheers, mate.
Salute.
What'd you get?
Iced matcha.
Do you see the smugness I'm about to deal with?
I'm detoxing from life right now. Give me some slack.
Gotham is one block up from Adorama on 19th Street, and it's owned by a photographer and a filmmaker, so we're trying to support everybody. And you guys can go over there, pick up what you want, say what's up, Adorama sent you, and then grab a seat. And you guys are good to go for the event tonight. Jonny Edward will be here, but who is Jonny Edward? Who is this man, this myth, this... I'm not going to say legend. I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to give it to you. So, Jonny Edward... we've been passing each other for quite a while out there. You cannot miss this guy, clearly. Really, a really well-respected light technician. I'm going to call him a fine art portrait photography, though he's going to be like, ugh. But you do have an aspect to your portrait photography that goes, it's not face value.
Yeah.
You do pay attention to the light. I mean, and the little details. You do try to show your setup. You try to show the environment that then you're not trying to go like, who knows where they are? Oh, look, it's a background. Like, no, it's always like very forthcoming with your process. And then it's just super clean in the end. You have a clear vision in your color theory and your color grading. It's very apparent. It's very intentful.
Thank you.
Which I think is the goal here. We're going to show his Instagram as we talk about it. But Jonny, thank you so much for coming through.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
How are you?
I'm well.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah, I've been in the city since Thursday. I did some stuff with Lindsay Adler over the weekend that was absolutely brilliant. So I'm sweating out here and making art, doing the thing.
I think sweating out here is 90% of production industry, honestly.
That's absolutely. It's been wild. I
mean, you seem so I don't want to say curated, because you do throw in like wild cards. Like, this is not how you would light the next person, right? It's not like but when I say intentful, while you're lighting, you're getting to that. It's not like you're guessing and going, you're making educated decisions on the fly to get to what you're already seeing. It's not like I'll know when I see it with you. At least that's what I get from it. Am I wrong?
No, that's definitely accurate. I think for me, I've been doing this so long at this point, and I'm so obsessive that it looks like a lot of this is off the cuff, but there is intentionality behind that. I have a vagary, a general concept in mind, and then I work toward that. And once I get to that, then it becomes refinement. And it's really intuitive. So it's like, I'm not metering light. I'm not doing that. I respect that process entirely. It's just, for me, I want to get to something where I'm like, that is it. And whatever that might be. And that's going to vary person to person, set to set, scene to scene, project to project, all of that.
You were, before we went live, you were saying, well, I kind of feel like I'm doing more commission than commercial.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what that's about, because I don't think people even understand that difference.
So I think, like, when I first started out, we talked about this, literally, everyone. I'm going to have to move like this. So when I first started out, I was doing a lot of commercial style work, traditional, commercial work. And I think I just got away from that. Like, I love commercial work. I love the challenge of working off of a creative brief, but I also load the constraints of working off of a creative brief in that. So, I mean, it's kind of like a 6 for half a dozen scenario for me. So I think at this point, I've become more of like a photographer's photographer. So in terms of my paid work, most of it is coming from artists, generally photographers, musicians, painters, sculptors, and they're like, hey, I want to be represented for myself, for my brand, for this period in my life in an artful, expressive way. and they seem to resonate with my style, which I'm grateful for, as is my accountant. And so they come to me and pay me money to do what it is I do, the crazy, chaotic process that is my workflow.
Yeah, but I think that's the best part of being established is you're not trying to explain what you can do.
Absolutely.
You have a body of work that you put out there and you go, this is what I do. Do you want this? Or if this is a jump point for you, let me know where we go from here.
Very much
but
so.
I think that's the hardest point. And I'm in an era where I'm kind of like, I'm just enjoying the fact that you know what I can bring. If I have to figure it out, I can figure it out. There's no like, I think that's what a lot of you guys might get stuck on is like, I can't figure this look out that's in my brain. And then you stop.
That's a really big thing. And I think that's creative freedom. That's why I focus.
I got you.
That is why I focus. Okay, well, testing. That's why I focus so much on the craft. I mean, ultimately, when I'm creating, I'm less technical and more intuitive, but I obsess about the craft because I want to be able to look at something and say, I can recreate that. I want to know no matter where I'm at, with whatever gear, with whatever human being, that I can make an incredible portrait. That's to me, being where I need and want to be as an artist, as a photographic artist.
Yeah, and I think one of the scariest things, I always like a studio to me is a blank page.
Yeah.
And if a writer can get anxious about a blank page, you can get anxious about a blank studio.
The tyranny of the blank wall, or the studio, whatever you're saying, that's a very real thing, especially when you have more gear. During my workshop this week, and I was just quipping. Quizzically, I was quizzically quipping. Yes.
Quipping.
Quite. Pinkies up, everyone.
That's a Spider-Man term. That's all. That's where I know it from.
So I was thinking fondly about my first studio that was like 150 square feet. I had one light that I didn't know how to use. I had one modifier, and I had a canvas backdrop, and I didn't even know what canvas backdrops were. It was just left behind. But the nice thing about that is it forced me to work within the constraints of that setup. And I created brilliant work, even looking back at it now. This is a very privileged thing to say, but it's like now in my studio, I have so many lights, and I have so many sets, and I have so many setups that it's that, like, paralysis by analysis syndrome. So I look at this and go, well, there's 10,000 ways that I can do this. Which way do I want to do? And so I just have to get into motion, because if I stop and wait for everything to align, I'll never start moving.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, please.
I think guys like us, our brains are just like spinning inside our skulls like crazy.
All the time.
And we were just having a conversation about it's like sometimes when gear goes down or we don't have the thing, it actually sharpens us into where we should be ending up, or you don't get all this static, I call it, where I'm like, I don't know which way to go in this. Yeah. I have all the ability to do it. I have the tools to do it. And the hardest thing to do for me is make a decision on maybe it's like an ADHD of creativity.
It's definitely
I don't know. But I think being able to work on the fly is what is the strength, not just because you can do it, but because it gets you more focused.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Is there times where someone comes to your studio and you're like, all right, I'll start. I don't know if you work the same way, but I'll start off with like something similar that I shot that looks like someone, like their skin tone, the way they dress, their vibe.
Absolutely.
But is there a time where that's not there?
No, for me, I think there's always an anchor. Like I need an anchor. So I tend to start with familiar, just like you, and then I quickly branch out of that. So I might start with something that I know that I feel somewhat easeful with. And then once the wheels start turning, I'm like, hey, we're going to pivot. We're going to add a light. We're going to take a light away. We're going to alter the styling. We're going to bring in another set element. I'm going to change my focal length. Like something starts to pivot. And then once I open up that door, then it's sort of just like that muse scenario where, I look like I'm orchestrating something. It's pure chaos. I try and make it look elegant. So there's pirouettes and things. But amidst all of that, I'm just like stumbling and sort of failing forward until I get to that point. And I'm doing it consciously and with intention, but it's still a meander. Like I Mr. Magoo my way through things in the studio. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, and you guys, you're welcome to ask questions. That's the whole point of this being live. I hope you guys are doing well. What's going on, Dale, Joel, Rick? Been a while. How are you?
Hey, gents.
I've seen you shoot in a place as small as a trade show booth. I've seen the walkthrough of your studio on the PPA channel, and I'm like, it's kind of like which way do you go, right? And I think that when you and me are doing demos, you steer it based on them.
Yeah.
But when you're doing client, is the client steering it for you at all? Do you vibe off of them and do you collab with the client? Do you show them what you're tethering to? Because there's a lot of guys that are like, you're not going to look at the tether until I'm ready to show you.
So I think it's a little bit of give and take. A lot of people come to me these days and they're like, hey, I just want you to run with this. But even with that, like I never want it to be a monologue when I'm working with someone. I always want it to be a dialogue. So if I was photographing you, I would still bring you into the process. I'm going to say, hey, how are you feeling about this? And you get that knee-jerk reaction, right? Because like you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, no, it's it's nice. And you're like, okay, well, you think this is terrible. So let's figure out why you think this is terrible so we can make it better.
And it's their insecurities usually.
Oh, absolutely. It's that. And then once like, I'm never just going to ask someone like that would be a rude question. Like, what don't you like about yourself, Seth? But if that comes out organically and you're like, hey, like I got this tattoo when I was XYZ and I don't want to show it off because we're no longer together, or whatever it might be, you know? And so I'm like, oh,
covered up over
yeah,
here.
that's everything. All of the mistakes of my life are buried in ink.
Welcome to the club.
Hence, you can tell the type of life I've lived. So, but I definitely like it to be interactive. And I think, generally we'll start with something that I would consider to be more conservative. So we might have a mood board built out for a thing. We get that. And then I'm like, I always overbook time. So then it becomes, hey, how about we play? I'm like, Seth, I know we were trying to do this minimalist thing and everything else. I'm like, but like I have a buffalo fur coat back there and a bunch of gold. Like, you want to just go kingly on this and see what happens? No pressure whatsoever. And then just open that door, and then people feel less constrained by whatever those expectations are. And I think once expectations fall by the wayside, then you can avail yourself to sort of whatever is in the moment.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that, because I think when celebrities pass away, we're in this amazing era where we get to see all these B-side images that come out of nowhere. And that's when you see the guy in a buffalo coat with jewelry that might have been a politician or something, weird, right?
Yep.
There's I forgot which photographer it was, and I feel ashamed right now. But no matter who he shot, celebrity, how old, whatever, the last frame he made them jump.
Okay.
And everyone, based on, some people are not athletic, and some people are very athletic, and some people have energy, some don't.
Yeah.
But it really broke whoever they are.
Yeah.
And you got this, and they all are on the same level field of you're standing still, you're jumping, and to just get different, infinite different.
That's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then as a body of work, as a gallery showing or something like that, that would be tremendous.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
man.
an equalization.
Then it becomes a Nike ad.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you retire.
Just jump.
Jump,
bro.
The process I use a lot with portraits is I go into it with, like, I told you guys my 3-shot process, right? I go into there, I get them the shot that's technically sound, clean, maybe a little boring, but it's clean and perfect, right? I give them a second one that was like something I've tried before that I know would work, and it's something that's completely different, but I know it's worked and I've done it. And you got their trust at that point.
Yeah.
You got 10 more minutes, throw something at the wall.
Absolutely.
Spin a light around and just figure something out and just go for it. And maybe if you like it, that becomes your second shot one day.
Yeah.
There is a question from Joel in the chat. How do I manage the trial and error of setup, but also manage the constraint of the client's time and keep your subject engaged with the shoot?
So, I mean, that's a kind of I always do the politician thing. I'm like, well, Joel, that's an excellent question, and thank you for asking it.
Talk super fast. I thought I talked fast.
No, so it's like, and then I get excited. I'm nervous and excited in both of those things. So it's like, it's Chris Tucker in The Fifth Element. That's what I start getting like.
Rudy Rod?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, let me try and slow down my pace here. You just have to jingle keys at me. Like I respond like a toddler.
Shiny.
So I think like I do a lot of testing before someone gets in my studio. So it's like I don't have things set up. I like to set up when someone's on site with me because that allows me to build rapport, right? So I know generally what lights, but they may not be built out yet. I might be putting a modifier on. And so it's a very low pressure way. If someone walks into the studio and they're uncomfortable in front of the camera, they do this. They see, 5-foot octas, and they see this, and they see a scrim and everything else, and it's terribly intimidating. So if they can just walk into a space, and then we can develop rapport while I'm setting that up, I think that's a really big thing. However, like I'll do testing before. So for my first setup, kind of like what Seth was saying, I think we have a very familiar process, or similar process rather. I have that laid out, but then for the experimentation thing, then I'm pushing once that's already done. And I think you don't even necessarily need to do this with clients at first. Like you'll get into a better workflow, do it with friends, do it with creative projects, do it with yourself or self-portraits, and then you're not going to be sweating. I think that's one of the biggest things is like if you're not comfortable doing this and you have a client coming in who's a high-value client, that is probably not the best time to do this for the first time. Because if you're in the back having a panic attack and they're looking at you and you have 15 minutes, like the end result of that might not be ideal. So I would really suggest just doing this on your own at first and then start building that in, even if it's the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it might be. And then it becomes a stepwise process to being confident, but also more exploratory at the same time.
And if you want to make it easier to explore, so to speak, that second look, have it already going a little bit. Like, don't make them wait. The longer they wait, the more doubt comes in.
Absolutely.
You want to show them, they're never going to see what you're seeing. Don't forget that. Like, they're not us. They're civilians.
True. Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, it's true.
Like, so you have to kind of just execute and get it going, and your demeanor will be reflected in them tenfold.
It is.
But do you find, so it's interesting you said that. So you said they people can get intimidated by like seeing a 5-foot octa or whatever. I'm actually finding the opposite. I'm finding that more people around lighting and being in front of cameras after Zoom calls and all this stuff, that they're kind of like almost relieved that, oh, good, this should look good. Like they're almost, I think they're getting, at least younger people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially they're filming themselves a lot. They're getting in front of ring lights a lot. Sometimes I get someone that they're just like, oh, they almost believe you now. They're like, oh, this must be awesome. There's so much stuff around.
The farcical association kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I get that. I get that with the tattoos, honestly. Like when I do commercial work, if I walk into a corporate boardroom, the person who's there is like, this guy's definitely an artist. It's just the assumption, like if you have head tattoos, you can do art. That's not true for a lot of people. But whatever, I'll take the false association because it works in my favor. I will say I've definitely found that more people seem to be interested in lighting. So when I'm lighting, I'm working with constants a lot these days. So someone will be like, it could be a lawyer. And they're like, what's that doing? What's that doing? And I love deconstructing that. So I think I'm always talking, going back to that lead time. Like if you're making someone wait, it's like I'm just a verbose person anyway. But if I'm switching things, I'm maintaining the conversation. I'm not giving them downtime to start getting in their head, to go elsewhere energetically, to start going like, oh, should I have not ate that burger last night? Whatever it might be. It's like I almost short circuit people. I had someone leave a session recently and they're like, I have no idea what just happened. It was like an acid trip, but it was great. And so it's almost a disorientation, just keeping them outside of their head so that they could be present with you in the moment.
Yeah, and also you want people not just having the shot and going, yeah, it's on my wall. You want them to be talking about the experience they had, right?
Absolutely.
So now we're in the era of captions. Oh, now it's not just getting put on your mom's wall. Like, oh, this happened. It was so much fun. And they're going to take stories on their Instagram while they're working with you. And that's all part of it now, So you kind of have to lean into that as well, that you're, I don't want to say tap dance, but
there is.
Yeah, it's a little bit, right?
I mean, and you and I were talking about that earlier. There's a performative element for me, at least. Like I'm generally like a fairly theatrical person. I'm sure a lot of you can't tell. I'm relatively eccentric. Seth has seen me literally running around with wings on in a conference, and
I felt so bad for you.
It was, it was good until it wasn't. Like all things.
Like you just.
I think it's, we all. I have a very high threshold for peopling, but once I hit that threshold, the bottom just drops out. So what Seth saw was I had these wings on. I was trying to go back to my room.
I'm talking 4.
Yeah, like literally giant wings on.
Black, big. The $1,000 wings you see at trade shows.
Like the couture wings. And so like I'm trying to get into the elevator and I'm realizing that I can't turn. And at that point, I almost just gave up on all things. I was like, that's it. I'm going to sell the camera. I can't get into an elevator. It's all over.
I'm not going to lie to you. I thought the lights were going to dim. A spotlight was going to hit him. He was going to sit on a bucket that's been turned over. Kind of like a sad clown moment. Like, I mean, I think you had makeup on.
Yeah,
maybe?
I did.
But you looked, I was like, I'm not going to bother him. I was like,
and thus with dignity, the swan dies.
You're more of a peacock, I think.
That definitely just falls over. There wouldn't be any dignity anyway.
It's funny you say that about the tattoos, because I don't talk about my tattoos a lot, but I will say there's instances where the guard drops.
Yeah.
They're like, you're not a suit. You're not a guy selling me something. When I started getting heavily tattooed, I told my father, I'm like, this is my suit and tie.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not hiding anything, and I'm showing I'm committed to who I am and all this stuff. But there is something to be said for sometimes people don't go to the photographer they think they're going to get the best shot out of. They go to the photographer they're going to vibe with, period. And you'll be, I think you probably had this happen where maybe on the 5th time they booked you, that's when the magic, like there's a level that you're on together because now they're in it with you.
Very much so.
And they've been through it.
Yep. I agree. Well, and even you talking about like that element of people talking about the experience, for me, that's where I get work from. The photos are great. I mean, I have great photos, but there are a ton of great photographers out there. There are a ton of really brilliant people. It's because the individuals who work with me then go on and they're basically like evangelizing that experience to friends, to family, to anyone who listens. You have no idea. I've never laughed so hard in my life, and that was brilliant. And, I got all this stuff off my chest that like I haven't been able to, or whatever it might be. And so that's the focal point. When they look at the photo, they don't see the image, they see the experience. And that's the power of the image. It's a conduit for what they experienced when that image was being created. And I think that's really where the significance is.
And then the side effect of that I find is a portrait, in my opinion, is to portray someone, right? I mean, that's my whole thing with it. It's not just like, I'm going to use Rembrandt lighting for everything. I can't stand it. My whole thoughts on it. But, when they've had an experience, when the portrait portrays more than just that image. So let's say they go to show it to somebody or someone that knows them uses that. Like if they're a speaker like we are and they use it, they'll see that somewhere else. And then they see what they said about it and how much they're sharing about it and stuff. Then you're seeing how much energy that person has and the person that they are. And the fact that they didn't just show up like a dentist going, I need a LinkedIn shot. Let's just get this over with. Chop, chop, chop. There is somebody who says, I love your Haunted Beauty series. Can you speak to your thought process in developing the post edits and goals with that series? You do pay attention in post pretty heavily.
Yeah, I do. And so I think the really interesting thing is like I'm not, let me just make this clear. I'm not a purist overtly. So like I try and get everything right in camera, and it's not because I have any judgment on heavy post-processing workflow or compositing. I love it. Some of my best friends are brilliant artists in that way. It's for me, my biggest struggle being a photographer is feeling like an artist. So if I don't do it in camera, I feel like less of an artist, and then I feel less connected to the medium. I feel less connected to myself, and then I feel less connected to the people in front of my camera. So I try and get it 90% of the way there in camera, but then I just, that last 10%, it's polishing in post. So it's like most of my workflows in Capture One, and the colors are already there. The backdrop was selected relative to skin tone, relative to wardrobe, relative to this, relative to that. And then I'm going to pull a little bit of magenta out, and I'm going to add a little bit of browns into the shadows, or warmth into the shadows. And so it's just finagling. For me, it's that last little bit of push. But if you saw my images straight out of camera and then you saw the final product, you'd be like, oh, they're almost doppelgangers of one another. It's pretty close. Also, I worked in the corporate world, everyone, which is probably surprising. This was pre-me, right? Pre this.
What was the corporate gig?
Oh, I was a business-to-business liaison in the digital marketing sector. So I did that at a relatively high level. So yeah, I would definitely show up. I had my frosted tips then. You know, I looked like one of the Backstreet Boys. Less tattoos.
I can see it.
I'm going to have to, and I would just walk in. I'm like, hey, guys, it's about synergy, Let's go ahead and get those reports on the table so we could look at the metrics for Q1. and that was my little American Psycho moment.
But then you can also, when you have those types of people in your studio, you speak that language.
And those of you who know me know I've lived 1,000 lives. It's like I've done masonry work. I've owned a tree business. I was a personal trainer. I was an EMT. I've done all of these different things. So anytime I can have, even when I'm on, in the subway here, like if someone next to me, if I happen to strike up a conversation, they're like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to work for. I'm like, oh yeah, I was a barista. Where do you work? What type of stuff are you doing? So it's like that relatability, I think, is actually my superpower. Being behind the camera just leverages that relatability, but ultimately people get around me and they feel comfortable because there's some place that I can find rapport with them, like a legitimate rapport.
Yeah, I find that a lot of portrait photographers, maybe 7 out of 10 times, a successful portrait photographer, they'll tell you the 17,000 jobs they've had over the years, because you had to do something between or whatever.
Absolutely.
But that also adds more to you. Like everything you've done adds more of a character that you can connect to the next person. You can be the most introverted person ever, but when it's time to do it, you can do it. It's funny that you said that in camera you feel like you're being an artist when you're getting it close. And to me, I'm being a technician. If you are looking at the warmth and stuff after the fact, that's the art part, I feel.
Interesting.
I feel like the tightness on set
Yeah.
is technical for me.
Interesting.
I don't
Yeah, and I think we have a divergent thing. And I mean, for me, it's, I like primarily with constants now. So a big part of that is just like dialing things up and down. So, I mean, I'm looking obviously at like luminosity. I'm indirectly looking at ratios without metering. And so all of that building in, and I'm like, all right, well, we're going to change the pose. We're going to change this. We're going to change that. And so me, that's my symphony. I feel like I'm sort of orchestrating everything in the moment. And then when I get to the last part, it's kind of like recording a song and then mastering it, so that's my analogy here. So like I'm recording the music when I'm there, and like I don't want to have to do a lot mastering. And that's also just me being lazy because I work in a corporate environment. Like I don't want to sit in front of a computer. I loathe it. All of you can see me doing this here. This is how I am when I'm editing. So, I'm at a standing desk, and then I'm sitting, then I'm standing on a ball, then I'm doing cartwheels, and I'm answering the door, then I'm like mopping the floor. I have to be in motion. I'm like a shark. I feel like if I stop, I'll just turn upside down and float to the surface. So,
man, I'm over it as I'm shooting it. I don't even want to look at the images again, let alone edit.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I do everything live for you guys. I'm like, look, I did it live. We're done. I'm out of here. Right?
Finito.
Forget about it. Kevin is saying I was able to see Jonny shoot recently at a workshop. My first thought was that Jonny should wear a Fitbit when he shoots because he's always constantly moving on set and his energy was amazing.
So for those of you, like I did a workshop at Lindsay Adler's brilliant studio in Jersey City, 2 of them actually this past weekend. I'm not going to lie, like I had my iPhone on me the entire time, and I don't know how accurate the steps are. Both days I walked over 15,000 steps in the studio. I did not leave the studio. So, I mean, yeah, it's wild. I'm always pacing. I'm always moving. It looks like capoeira. Like, I'm just like, it's the back and forth, and then there's a backwards cartwheel, and people are like, what's the shot? And then they look at it, and they're like, I would have never thought to do that. I'm doing the inchworm on the ground, just kind of popping along.
It's funny. We do a lot of the trade shows. By the end of the trade show, I walked 36 miles.
Absolutely.
36 miles.
Yeah.
You got gear on you.
Yep.
And so then people are like,
it's a rucksack march.
They have no idea the exhaustion that comes from. And you'll always be like, oh my God, I'm never doing this again. Then next year comes around like, all right, I'm signed up for 3 more classes. Let's go.
Let's go ahead and get her done.
Yeah, but in the moment, you're just like, how did I get through all this?
Yeah.
But you don't realize that it's all mental. You're doing something you want to be doing.
Yep.
You're not thinking about where it's at. we're the same way.
Yeah.
You get on stage, it's like, I just got to get through this hour.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes,
Yeah.
I'm doing it at this level. If
Yeah.
I'm dead by the end, that hour lasts forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, if I would have lost a leg coming in here, I would be here right now with it bandaged up and tourniqueted off, and we would still be going here. You do what you have to do.
So outside of portraits, is there some other genre? I mean, you're very people-oriented, and I think that the variable of the human probably keeps you going.
It does.
But is there something else besides
Definitely
portraits?
street photography. So I think like
The
street,
candid.
candid, and just architectural stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so architectural stuff. I mean, like even just being here, obviously, it's I'm a kid in a candy store.
Oh, New York has architecture?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
It's okay. It's fair and okay. So I mean, I've been in constant motion since I've been here, and it's candid portraits, it's legit portraits, it's architecture stuff, it's the Irving Penn style. Like I'm doing studies of cigarettes, like. It's light and shadow, I think, more than anything else. So I see that in landscapes. I see that in street. Like I'm not really a macro person. I do some still life, and things like that as well. But the human experience, the human condition, the human variable definitely is it for me.
I thought macro would be kind of your thing a little more, to like push yourself to an abstraction point.
Yeah, I could see that. I feel like there's more technical requirements and there's extension to
Thinking and stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to think. I just want to do. Like let's be honest here. I'm not the brightest bulb in the bulb pack.
Oh, please. When you started going towards constant light, do you feel that there's like this I call it less abrasive environment for the subject, so people don't have flashes banging off?
Yes.
But you also have to be at the tune of, I'm not cranking my lights all the way to melt their retinas out.
Yeah.
And I do think that when they don't realize the shots are being taken, because with a strobe, they know when they're hitting.
There's an awareness. There's a hyper awareness.
Does that work in your favor, do you feel? Or?
I think so. And like, I consider myself a conversational photographer. That's really how I talk about my process. Because if I were photographing you, like this is what we would be doing, and then you would tell me a story and you'd be cracking up and I would pick up the camera and take that photo. So I tend to be that way. Like I'm not directly pointed. So not having that technical intermediary, the flashes, is a big thing. I think also because I work with a lot of shadows, especially as I started getting into education, it's just easier for me to get to that end process. Like later, those of you who join the demo, and all of you should, you're going to see how I build this out with strobes, with Flashpoint gear. And it just obviously is a little bit more structured because I'm referencing my tether screen, I'm referencing this, versus otherwise, if it's with the constants, I can be talking to you and I'm never losing this. Right. So there's less of a dissonance between me and whoever's in front of my lens. And I definitely think that that's worked in my favor. And the last thing I'll say about that too is referencing back what you were saying earlier about content and things. Then the BTS looks incredible. So if I'm doing something really, someone's taking an iPhone shot and then people are like, that looked like a living painting. Like, how do you do that?
I don't want to hear this painterly thing ever again.
Jonny's a painterly photographer. I paint like Jackson Pollock. I'm just slapping stuff on there,
How do you feel about that term painterly? It gets under my skin.
It's a little bit irksome for sure. And I think, it's because it's such a vagary. Like it's absolutely such
a cop out. Come on.
It is. And I mean, it's kind of like how you can, you put a backwards coat on someone and then you call it high fashion, right? But I mean, it's that exact same thought process. It's like, it's this be all end all. And people want to say painterly, I think, because they want to associate high value, So if you're putting yourself out there and it's like, there's other ways to convey value in a way that's not so gauche or repetitive. Like in a sea of everyone calling themselves painterly photographers, I don't want to be a painterly photographer. I want to be, something that's going to make me stand out. Even the branding of that, I think, has become so redundant. Someone's like, oh, you're a fine art photographer. They're like, so is my nephew. He's at NYU right now. So it just stretches into everything. And plus, like I said, that can mean a million and one things. That can be, is it Caravaggio painterly, or is it another kind of painterly? So then so what are you really saying with that?
I think some people lean on it because they just want to say elevated.
Yeah, I like
and
it.
And they don't realize that, or I don't know, let's be very honest. A lot of people, when we're in those giant classes, they picked up a camera and that's been their only creative outlet because or whatever. They didn't go through going to museums every weekend and all this stuff. So they don't really understand what you're saying by painterly. They just go, I just want it to look special.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I know I sound bitter.
No, but you are. It's fun.
You got the guys on stage saying painterly to get into their brain, to get them to kind of sell them on the point of it.
It's a bit of a plant. I mean, for me, the way that I interpret it, and I say this when I'm teaching too, is I see it as like smooth tonal roll off. So I think it's when people see something that's contrasty but soft at the same time. And so you have smooth transitions through the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows, but you still have dimensional punch.
Yeah.
And so like technically, I think that's what's being conveyed there. But I think the word itself, it just has become a be all end all.
Right.
It's like everyone like, oh, I photograph someone with clothes on, so I'm a fashion photographer. And it's like, call yourself whatever you want. Like that's your right. But overall, it's like when people are like, oh, I want to do fashion photography, and I talk about it, I'm like, do you really? Like, do you do that? And is that something you really want to do if we're talking about actual, legitimate, defined fashion photography? So that's the nomenclature of our industry is really kind of a weird thing.
Because there's this like little marketing tinge to all of it.
There is.
And you're just kind of like, can you cut off this part and get to the thing? But the painterly thing, I just hear it and I'm just like,
the twitch.
Yeah, I get a little weird about it. And there are people that shoot painterly, but their idea of that is smooth, soft, and then filter the snot out of it in post. And if that's your thing, knock yourself out. But like, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
I think one of the really funny things I saw is, I don't know, there was a video recently on art restoration, and I don't know if it was at the Met or at the Louvre, but even like the tones that are normally used with painterly stuff, it's like they go yellow, they go green on top of that. That's not what the paintings actually look like. That's years of grime. So if you bring it off, these painters were representing things accurately.
Oh, you mean the patina?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, even that aspect of it. So it's even funny when we talk about that. It's like, well, I push yellow tones into my work. I'm like, so you want your thing to look like it's old and dilapidated. So it's a very strange psychological phenomenon to me. If it works for you, I would do it, but don't do a thing just for arbitrary reasons.
Well, I think there's a few things going on. One, I think people don't know what they're looking for.
Absolutely.
And people that haven't been creating a lot or have been trained inside to notice subtleties, little things, don't really know what they're even aiming for. They just know what they'll know a feeling when they see it, when they create it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's just, I think that they lean on the stuff that's fed in their head because there's a lot of information out there, but not a lot of wisdom. And they're just listening to that YouTube guy say the thing. And so then they want to be able to talk to another guy that's doing something going like, blah, blah, blah.
We know the words of the industry type of thing. And same with cinematics, another one. It's like, what is...
I use that one a lot.
Yeah,
but
but
I use it as a narrative term.
No, and I mean, to me, it's more about like that can mean so many different things, like the interpretive element of cinematic. So it's just, so I think there's like all things. There's the definition, then there's sub-definitions and subgenres, but...
We're putting out a dictionary soon, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll see it. You can join our Patreon. I'm just kidding.
Seth and Johnny's deconstruction. But I think for me too, I've just tried to move away. Like Seth asked me before we went live, he's like, do you want me to refer to you as, an editorial photographer or fine art? And he said fine art. I'm like, don't do that. But like, to be honest, I kind of load the definitions in general. Like I'm just an artist and a photographer. Like one day I might be an editorial photographer. One day it might be fashion. One day it might be abstract or surrealist. So I think the issue with the definitions is, if I say I'm a portrait photographer, we then have these rules what a portrait photographer can and cannot do. This is projection for me, of course.
Oh, no. I think the problem is that a lot of labels come with this aftertaste of ego.
Yeah, agreed.
When people say I'm an artist, it's like, okay, what are you trying to say? Blow my mind with your work. Like, I don't, I kind of get a little too Brooklyn about it, but
you lofty SOB.
Yeah, but I think because it's so hard to nobody as a photographer wants to be like, how many times have you heard like, what do you shoot? Oh, I shoot everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, nobody wants to be pigeonholed because they think they can't be seen as something else or shoot something else. But it's like, at some point, you just have to be confident in your identity.
Absolutely.
As a photographer or a creator. And I think that it's getting lost with where we're at in this era.
Agreed.
I mean, I came up assisting guys. There's kids that sit in these chairs that have never assisted anyone in their life and are already trying to do jobs, right? So you have to navigate it for yourself. And I would just say, really, really think about who you are and how you want to be defined out there and how you want to be perceived. Because let's be honest, guys like us, we get perceived a little
differently.
A little different.
And I will say too, the caveat to what I was just saying is that it's for me. Like that talk of definition, it has nothing to do with an externalization. It has to do because I studied engineering and biochem in college. Like I'm a very analytical person. So if I put arbitrary definitions on myself, I start to put myself in a box where I constrain myself. So it has nothing to do with the industry or externalization. It's just like, all right, how can I frame this in a way where I have the most levity to be as creatively as possible, because the engineering mindset takes over, and then I'm just like A plus B equals C minus D equals E, and then my work gets formulaic, and I look at it and go, why am I even bothering?
That's how I am, and I feel it coming too. I look at my shots, I'm like, I've done this shot 800 zillion times.
I'm just
Stop
regurgitating.
Yeah, and you kind of lean on it as a back foot. A lot of my special effects shots, even if the makeup is drastically different, I'm like skating by going, it's the same light I've been doing for like 15 years. Like
I deal with the same bit.
It's the same, Yep. Joel is asking, do you feel strobes will be more of a niche field in the future and concepts will assume the primary market? No way.
No way.
No way.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What people don't realize is that it's still physics.
Yeah, exactly.
And strobe is control.
Yeah.
You need to control an environment. You need to freeze action. You need to get clean, different types of color fidelity. There's a lot of reasons for either one.
Oh, yeah, and you need to shoot at f8 or f11, like at ISO 100. To use constants like that, you'd have 5Ks or HMIs out there, and you would literally be melting people's faces like the Holy Grail.
Yeah, and even as it gets smaller, there's still things like heat.
Yep.
And what's that word? Oh, brightness, ripping through retinas and blowing out of skulls,
Yep.
I think so, you ever see someone that's new to shooting with constants and they crank it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, look at your model.
Yeah, they're just
You know what I mean?
so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You do walk a fine line, and that's the thing. Like Seth's saying, when I'm shooting that, I might be at 2.8, I might be at 4. Like the highest, the most I'm ever stopping down is 5.6.
Oh,
most.
really? Okay.
When I'm working with constants. When I'm working with strobes, that's a different choice. But that's why in my studio, I might be 75% constants and then 25% strobes, but strobes absolutely have a time and a place for me. And I think even that, it's the whole like 0 and 1 type of comparison, because it's like, oh, you're a constant person? Well, I'm a strobe person. It's like, you should be both. You should use whatever lighting tools.
That is so dumb.
It's wild, literally. And it's, you're a Nikon person, I'm a Canon person. I'm like, okay, who cares? Like, they're tools. Like, use the right tool for the right job and do your job. Make your client happy, lift the person up in front of your camera. That's end of conversation.
What's important is that you realize what your tools are capable of, what you're trying to get from them, and are they delivering what you're trying to do?
Exactly.
And is it efficient? So a lot of times you guys see us like fudge things and like, rig things. Do I want to spend an hour rigging it, or do I want to spend 5 minutes because I brought the proper tool,
Exactly,
and I'm able to just get the job done? And also, you want to be consistent, especially when you're working with clients.
Oh, it's a huge thing.
Yeah, huge. You don't want to make them feel like you're guessing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. They're saying there's some technical engineers in the chat, man. You're of your species here. My father's an engineer. I've been raised on all that kind of and I think there's a lot to the science of it in photography specifically.
Yeah.
Like, you don't hear that in painting.
Yeah.
Right. But you hear a lot of it in photography with the way we have to create the light that we're going to create and capture the light we're creating.
Well, I think that's what I love about photography, is it's a really beautiful intersection of technology and engineering and art and expression. So there's this really beautiful intermediary, but even now I always have to say that when I'm teaching, is I'm like, listen, it looks like I'm doing this purely by feel, and you don't, once again, there's the Mr. Magoo aspect, but it's like, I have obsessed about lighting for a decade.
Yeah.
There was a period in time where that's all I was doing every single day in, day out. So it's that whole bit where I got to a point where I felt very in command of those tools and of the principles, and now I step back and I break those, or I play with them in a more carefree way, but I didn't just do that right away. So it's like, I wouldn't suggest you just pick something up and just start, being willy-nilly with it, although experimentation is important. So it's kind of like when you're teaching this. I don't know if this is weird for you too, but I tell people the stuff that I really want to teach, I can't, because I can't show them how I'm interacting with the client when I'm teaching at the same time. So it's the paradox of being observed, and therefore your process is different. And so someone like, later I'm going to be photographing Gerald, like, everyone who's watching, you're not going to see me if I was with Gerald alone, because we'd be, BSing and telling stories and everything else. And obviously, as I'm deconstructing, going, well, now you're saying me put the 8200 in, and I'm using that as my foundation light. And so it's all of it's just kind of a paradoxical thing, really.
I think one of the best things about what we do is light is predictable.
Yeah, it is.
And once you know what your lights are doing, there's no like, what would happen if I did? No. I know my options.
Yeah.
And I go, I need more contrast. I'm pulling that light farther away. Then the feel happens.
Yep.
It's a science,
exactly.
and it's a feel.
Yep.
So I when you can just go 8-ball corner pocket, 1, the people around you feel confident in what you're doing. 2, your anxiety drops off a cliff. You don't need it. You're not in that world anymore. You're doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when your subject trusts you, you start trusting yourself. And I think to get to that point, I mean, how many years it takes, but it's the best.
Yeah.
And then you get this like second wind. It's like your second native ISO. You know what I mean? Like, you actually get the
3200 now.
Oh yeah, I'm just going for it. But I think it's true. I think that everyone hits these milestone points in their career or their, I guess, workflow.
Yeah.
I don't know, like their demeanor and their work life. If you're doing something like paint, right, and you're just hucking paint at a canvas, you have no idea what that paint's going to do in the air and splatter the way it's going to splatter.
Yeah.
But light, I put it through a beauty dish. I know what that thing's going to do and what it's going to look like. And I think that's kind of the best time.
I agree.
When we get to that part.
Well, I think that's something that's sort of been lost a little bit too. And once again, I'm jaded too. So when I said, yeah, you're jaded, I'm jaded.
We're just tired.
Just retired old men. So I think, for me, there was this bit when I got into studio work where I sort of like, I had what people perceived as an exponential rise in skill. And so folks were like, oh, you're just so talented. You're so this, you're so that. I'm like, no, I'm working harder than anyone else. I probably took more photos in my first year of studio photography than most studio photographers take in 5 years. I was spending every single moment there. So my skill commensurated with the amount of time and effort I was putting into it. So, when someone asks, like, how do I get better? It's like, you have to create more, you have to do more, you have to work harder. There's no substitute for that. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
Yeah, and work smart.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
back in my BMX days, I had to shoot slide film, right? Every time I shot a roll, I had a notebook that went with every roll. And then I looked at what I did, and you had to understand what you did and how it affected it. Not just, let me change a bunch of things and go, yay. You don't want to get into quicksand. Understand what you changed, what happened, did it work or didn't it work?
Yeah.
That's how you get better. That's how you get more honed in, and you're not guessing or anything like that. Vic is saying, feed them with likes. It's almost lunchtime. Yes. Yes. My starving child needs this giant baby needs likes to eat.
Jonny the Giant Baby. There's my new moniker.
So your demo later is going to be layering light, which I was trying to explain to people, like, it's zones.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I find zones to be super important. You want to kind of jump into why, because it's like the third time I've seen you talk about layering light, and it seems like a thing that you're really trying to hammer in there.
So like I think for me, it's just it's a relatively intuitive way to look at using multiple lights that are intentional and harmonious. So obviously zones are a thing, like whatever you want to refer to that to. So it's like we're looking at our subject different than we're looking at our background. We're looking at our shadows different than we're looking at our highlights. So it's a way for me, structured wise, where I can deconstruct my scene and my subject and then go like, all right, what type of light do I want here? Do I want there? Do I want here? And I think people just try and jump into multivariable equations too quickly. So they have 4 lights and they just sort of turn them on, and they're not taking the time to like anchor things down and out. And so that's the bit where it's like we can do a lot with one, but once we get beyond that, like exactly what Seth just said, like you need to know what your light is doing. You need to know what each one of those lights are doing independently, and then you need to know how those different elements are interacting with each other in the totality of something.
Oh, they're notes.
Yeah,
they're all notes. Like you're just going to play a bunch of noise, or are we going to figure this out?
Yeah, is it going to be dissonant or is it going to be harmonious?
Dissonant or harmonious?
Yes,
Damn, son.
Quite. Yes, indeed.
Listen to this guy. If you guys want to check out the live demo, this QR code right here takes you to the events channel. Hit subscribe. You get the notification. You join in the chat again. You know what I'm saying? And it'll be there after the fact. So,
it'll be great.
You know, and this is the first time you're doing a demo on the in-house, son.
First time. Bring all the judgment, everyone. I'm here for it.
We have I got to say, I think we've built a really good audience.
Agreed.
So give yourselves a round of applause for being part of it.
Hats off to y'all.
If you're new here, hit subscribe, because this is like the 60th episode of this, which is bananas. I can't believe we've been doing this since 2023.
Heading toward the century.
Where did my life go? No,
See, this is the conversation, how it's going to go once we're off.
When you come to a place like New York, right? Do you try to rack up people you want to shoot with here? Like, are you finding people on Instagram or something like that and going like, hey, I'll be in New York in like a couple months. Would you want to connect and shoot? Or
generally, yes. So I mean, in this way, I've tried to filter those people in and get them into my workshops, just because I'm running such a tight production schedule. So I got in Thursday, shot Learn Plus with Lindsay on Friday, did a full day workshop for myself Saturday, did a full day workshop with Lindsay on Sunday, had kind of a down day that turned into a just storm of sorts. We won't talk about that storm. Yesterday, I actually got out, saw the city. That was really nice. Obviously, today's full production day here at Adorama with Flashpoint with Printique. Tomorrow's partial Printique. Another workshop on Friday with Nanlight in Midtown. And then I'm going to be able to hang out a little bit before a 10 p.m. flight, rather. So I did not have a lot of leeway built into this trip.
And yet he has time to shop for an outfit like this, guys. Unbelievable.
I've just been taking clothes off people I see on the street, you know? That's a nice jacket. Give me that jacket.
I just fell into a thrift shop. Whatever stuck, that's what I'm wearing.
Honestly, that's pretty accurate.
That's pretty accurate.
We call it eclectic.
I feel like you are harmonious, I'll use one of your words, with your own prop room.
Yeah.
I feel like you rock whatever is in that prop room and vice versa.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what people are hoping to expect when they go to your studio.
Well, I think in that way too, I talk about this with people a lot. Like I'm very much myself, for better and for worse. And so when people are in my presence, they feel comfortable being themselves too.
How can you get a genuine portrait if you're not genuine yourself?
Point being. And so people will ask me, they're like, oh, do I need to dress like this? Do I need to talk like this? I'm like, whatever you need to be you. You know, if that literally means like Crocs and cargo shorts and a Star Wars t-shirt, do that, rock it and own it. Like, you just have to be yourself, and people can sense that. Like, I don't want to get metaphysical, but it is an energetic element to that. Someone comes in, and if you're sitting there and you're just who you are, then they're like, all right, I'll be who I am. We have that happen all the time conversationally. There's those people you talk to and you're like, and you pull back from, and then there's those people that you lean into automatically. You just feel like drawn toward in that way. And
I think one of the things that we have to do on our side of the table is make them feel great about who they are.
Yeah.
Show them who they are. Really, I mean, this is where you become a photographer. Anybody can figure out lights and hit TTL and get a frame, but you get a subject to really own who they are and feel great about it. Daniel does a great job at this. Yeah. For as much grief as I give Daniel, I've seen him go up to someone and be like, your nose is huge. let me take a photo, and he'll and they're like, you know what, this is great.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable the way he does it. He's so honest and like disarming.
Yeah.
That you go, all right, let me give you a shit.
Well, like that, it's such a rarity to have that degree of honesty without malice. So for that to exist in a vacuum, because if you have a feature like that, normally people, if they're saying something, it's a derogatory. So if someone's just saying it factually because they're fascinated and they're not trying to be insulting, like that you respond to that in a different way.
Well, and the insecurities come from people's own self. They
very much
they
so.
manifest
Yeah.
them. People aren't looking at that or this or even judging this whole thing.
No one cares. If you're walking out on the street, no one cares.
We're all struggling with something.
That's the thing that I love about the city. I was telling that to someone yesterday. I'm like, I could literally pop a squat right here in the middle of the street. People would walk around me. Like there's and the gross indifference is another thing entirely. But whatever you think people are perceiving of you, they really just don't think about you. They really, oftentimes they don't see you. Everyone's in their own microcosm 90% of the time. So it's in one way, you're kind of like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But for me, it's liberating.
Oh no, New York is, if you want to be who you are.
Yeah.
You can come to New York and everyone else has got other things going on. Good for you.
Yep.
Just get out of my way. I can't be late.
Do not stand in the middle of the sidewalk.
Do not stand after you get up at the top of an escalator. Just stop, okay? And if you are standing at a subway door when I'm getting out, you are hitting that floor. I am over this, all right, people? Just come on. Can you tell I was born here?
Seth's next stream is going to be New York etiquette.
You know what grinds my gears?
Yeah.
So Brick by Brick is asking, can you discuss your post-editing workflow?
Yeah, so these days I'm doing basically almost all of it in Capture One. So since that latest iteration of the software where they introduced the AI retouching within Capture One.
You're into it?
Yeah. It's like, and it relatively closely approximates what I do, because normally, like, I would go through Capture One, I would do my color grading, I would do the raw processing, I would go into Photoshop, I would do some dodge and burn, and then I would do final color grading.
Whoa.
That's it. So, I mean...
Okay.
So, unpack that. Where'd the woe come from?
I thought you just went through 3 different programs. Am I wrong?
No, Capture One and Photoshop.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were... Okay, never mind.
Oh, no.
I heard that. You were so fast, man.
No. So all right. So Capture One, then Photoshop. But now I find that the tools in Capture One, for me, they're relatively subtle, unless you, like anything, punch the slider all the way up, and then the person becomes like a gelatinous mass of whatever.
Yeah.
That's not great. But I'm pretty much sticking in Capture One for my entire workflow. So I'll bring someone in, or I'll bring a portrait into Capture One. I'll do the raw processing. I'll play with some color adjustments. I have a lot of fun when I'm doing post-processing. I think that's something I don't talk about a lot. Just like I play with my lights, I play in post. So I'll play with color, I'll play with tint, I'll play with shadows, I'll play with highlights, I'll play with dynamic range, and give myself a chance to see, hey, what if I crush the blacks? What if I go low contrast? What if I go high contrast? Because I am so linear in my mind, then I need to give myself an opportunity to see what other variations may look like. But once I get something dialed in, then that's about it. So, I mean, my workflow is bringing it in, making any global adjustments that I need to exposure, to contrast, to dynamic range, playing with some color grading, altering the tones a little bit, playing with grain and texture, clarity, all of those things we all do, and then using those retouching tools within there. So, I mean, now, even before when I was using Capture One and Photoshop, it might take me 5 minutes to edit a photo. Like that's getting long-winded for me. So I just want to be done, and I want it to be on to the next, and especially because I shoot series. So I'm not a photographer who's shooting a single image. So if I were to be taking 30 minutes or an hour and my set is 25 images, that is just a gross amount of time for me to be sitting in front of my workstation.
And you risk losing consistency.
Absolutely.
The more you lean, then you go back to the first one and you're like, whoa, this journey.
I thought I was using levels, but it was curves and this and that, and I did this. And then and even the light changes in my studio. I'm in a different mood. It's like I'm listening to whatever, Yo-Yo Ma one night, and then in the morning I'm listening to some Norwegian death metal. Yeah. And so all of a sudden I go from warm tones to cool tones. So it's like I want to keep that efficient, be able to get it done, say it's done, put it behind me, focus on the next thing that's in front of me.
And messing around with the sliders, believe it or not, can actually help you with your lighting. So when you like crush the blacks, you know what that noir will feel like on this type of person.
Yep.
And it sticks in your brain. Hopefully it sticks in your brain. I'm one of these guys that puts like a million images around me at all time.
Yep.
And I let it infect me.
Yep.
And hopefully out of nowhere, my subconscious goes, here.
You're essentially dreaming while you're awake. It just throws it in there.
I mean, hopefully. I got to say, like, I'm all Capture One. I don't even.
Same.
And I'm a big, listen, you want to retouch. I'm not a big fan of alter. I believe that if I'm going to use a camera, it is a documentative tool.
Yeah.
And I want to get as close to like what I was trying to get you in front of me. I don't want to look at someone and go, I wonder what it looked like before.
Yeah. And I'm the exact same way. And like if I'm working with a person, someone's like, well, how do I deal with texture in post? Like, Jonny, what's your workflow for dealing with highly textured skin? And I'm like, my workflow is out of changing my lighting. I would have changed the angle of my lighting. I would have added more fill. I would have done this. I would have done that. So I don't want to get to a point where I was not intentional enough or wasn't paying attention enough in camera, where I then have to make up for a lapse in my workflow in the moment after the fact.
And you can always tell that it's not real.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, oh yeah, this woman has no pores anymore, huh? There's no blood vessels anymore, huh? We evolved.
Well, and one of my favorite things is when someone, for an image that I have retouched, I love hearing, wow, that's really incredible you don't retouch your images. To me, that's the best compliment. Or if I'm using 4 lights and someone's like, man, can you deconstruct how you got that with 1 light? For me, because it's like, I want something to look organic. I want to reduce complexity to simplicity.
Yeah.
And that's elegance to me. So like, I want my images to remain a degree of authenticity and elegance always.
Yeah, I always say there's 2 questions, 2 main questions, no matter what genre of photography you're shooting. 1, are you an observer or are you a participant? And 2, do you want them to see the work or do you not want them to see the work? If you want them to see the work, it's a little bit more of an ego, like, look at what I'm doing. Yeah. If you don't, it's really more focusing on the subject, which is what I try to do for client work.
Yeah, same.
But are you a participant or are you a participant or are you observer? Jonny is a participant until it's time to not be part of that image, and now he got them where they got to be. So
Absolutely.
Those are 2 things to keep in mind, in my opinion. 2 things. To keep
I agree. Totally.
If you guys have any questions, we're cranking here. This is the best time for you to throw in any questions you got left.
Ask away.
Capture One is really, in my opinion, has come such a long way. It was such an industry standard in commercial studios my whole career. And it was phase 1 a million years ago.
Of course.
Now you look at it, it's like kind of Lightroom.
Yeah.
And now it's doing AI editing. So like, if you're with the AI editing though, you kind of have to have like a piece of like, that's kind of what I would have done anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And that's exactly how it is for me, because I'm so hands off, even the textural elements, it's like, I tend to leave everything that's part of a person's face, I leave. Unless they specifically ask me to take it off.
Oh, I leave scars.
Yeah, I do too. Always.
I love scars.
And I mean, there's a big story about that. I won't get into it now, everyone. But like, I would highly recommend, like, don't touch those things that are part of a person unless if they ask you to. If they're like, hey, I have a mole on my cheek, will you take that off? Take it off. Like, that's
just pull out a scalpel and you're like, just hold still.
But I mean, and the reason I say that too is there's a very strange thing. If I have a mole on my face and I like it, and then you take it off, then you're like, hey, that's not good. You're not good as you are. And for a lot of people, that's really triggering, because a lot of us grew up in homes that weren't great, with like an auntie who's like, your face is X, Y, and Z. So don't reinforce the BS that people had to deal with their life.
Yeah, but there's also the side of that. You take off a mole and they put it out there and it's not who they are when people meet them. That's a horrible situation.
The catfishing thing. And it's the funny thing is, like, when I do my portraits, I barely edit my own portraits, but for some reason, maybe it's because I shoot with a 35, every time, it's every other one of you that meets me in person will say, Jonny, I thought you were taller, and I'm like, I'm hobbit sized. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Like, everyone, just for the record, I am only 5'6". So don't expect 6'3" when you meet me. I know I got a big personality, but that does not equate to the length of my shins or femurs, so
proportions. You know what I mean? I get that all the time from the videos. Everybody's always like, you're a lot taller than us. I'm like, yeah, because they shoot me at eye level and it's whatever.
All of the assumptive stuff.
So you guys are lighting up in here. Seth, have you ever showed how the room is set up? This room. So if you watch Mondays on this channel, I kind of go through it. So if you want, there's 20 episodes of me live on Mondays. You ask questions and I physically do the answer in here. And most of the time I'm ripping the setup apart to show you. So check out that on Mondays noon. I'm live and you can watch them back after. And then another question was, speaking of One Light setup, the shoot you posted recently with Aiden?
Yeah, Aiden.
The photos with the single light above him, are you also using fill light?
Incidental fill light, yeah. So this was at a workshop that I produced in Mexico. I was in Monterey, which was a lot of fun. Like, I went all through Mexico, and like literally some of my favorite workshops I've done to date. But yeah, I was a gentleman who was actually an attendee who I asked to model for the workshop because one of the models didn't show up. Really, really great look. But we had used
one attendee you want to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I walked in, it just really in great energy, great presence. So one of the shots was there's this lamp, like it kind of looks like an IKEA lamp. It's a hanging lamp, and then we put a pavo bulb inside of it. And so it's just hanging. So the predominance of the light is coming in there, but there was incidental light in the room. So because we had other constant setups going on behind us and in other places, there was light that was spilling in. That wasn't necessarily intentional. Had all of those lights been off, I would have added fill light to that. But since we already had the incidental light, even the differential in color made it feel like it was in the moment, going back to quote unquote cinematic vibes. To me, that just felt a little bit more raw. It was a little bit grittier versus if I would have dialed everything in. But so there was fill. It wasn't directly put there, but if it was not there, I would have directly put something there to answer that question.
And then Michael Brown. Hey, how you been, Michael? Been a while. How do you deal with difficult clients? Duct tape.
Yeah, I don't book them. No, I mean, for me, I'm very, very thankful to say I'm at the stage in my career and with my business where, you know, I can say no. I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, I'm probably more grateful for that than anything else in my career right now. And I haven't been like that for most of it. You know, if someone came to me and they seemed like they were going to be a nightmare, I'm like, I have to be able to keep the lights on in my house. You know, so now I can say no, and I feel people out. I also think kind of what Seth and I were talking about earlier, because I have a very defined style, because I'm very known, because I have a certain archetype, the way that I look, the way that I speak, the way that I write in my branding material, I don't really have difficult people coming my way anymore.
Oh, really?
You know, to be honest.
What's that like?
Lovely. But when I do get someone, and I think a lot of times if someone's being difficult, there's always a projection. There's something that's happening under the surface. So I just try and have open communication with people, you know, and even if they are difficult, I'll work around that. I'm like, hey, I'm here to do a job. So I take the personal aspect out of it. If they're having an attitude, I'm just going to assume and give them the benefit of the doubt that something crazy is going on in their life. I'm still going to give them great service, but I'll pull myself back so I don't feel as personally invested. It's purely a professional exchange. I'll take their money. I'll give them a great photo and I'll leave it by the wayside. I see a lot of photographers, and I'm not calling any of you out because this still happens to me, but in like forums and groups and stuff where it's like, you know, I have this client, they said this to me and they sent me back and they wanted an additional request, you know, more retouching and and this and that. And it's like, my bit is I want people to leave happy no matter what. Like, if I'm going to give a refund, I'll do that. And it's not just for the client, it's for me and my stress levels. Like, I want to maintain my sanity. So just know you're not going to have an ideal client every time. And if someone's being a jerk, let them be a jerk, do your job, make the most of it, move on to the next person.
To be honest, it's actually worse for them because they could have gotten that extra look.
Exactly.
They could have gotten a little deeper.
Yep.
And instead they treated it like a drive-through.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's on them.
That is on them.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you're at a level where you can produce at a level quick, good. You got them in, you got them out. But they messed up because you could have had, you know, it's like that waitress that gives you that extra side of fries because they had them and you're the cool table. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. If any of you want to win my favor, give me potatoes. I'm just going to say that outright.
How do you respond? How many years have you been shooting?
So I mean, I've been behind the camera now for I think about 11 years. You know, I've had kind of a checkered relationship. I shot a little bit when I was a kid, but I picked up a camera, or what I would consider to be a real camera, Pentax K3.
Whoa,
about
nice.
11 years ago. I shot Pentax, you know, film cameras when I was younger. So I've been doing it for about 11 years. I've been photographing people for about 9 years now, and I've been in the studio for about 7 years.
Okay.
And going back to it, everyone, like, that's a very dedicated amount of time, to the extent where I've really alienated a lot of people in my life because I've given everything to the medium. So,
well, there's always a lot of people like, I've been shooting for 27 years. And it's like, have you, or you had a camera,
exactly.
You shot when you felt like it, you know, it's amazing when you go to the trade shows, like, and the amount of time people tell you they shot for them, like, wow, you've defied time and space. Congratulations. I'm like,
well, those are the exact same people too. A lot of times who will be like commenting on boards, you know, where it's like, if your name's Bill, I'm sorry, I always just use that as the archetypal name. We'll say William instead. I'll switch it up. So like William's on there and they're like, you know, this would have been a better photo if you wouldn't have cropped her elbow. And then you look at their work and there's like a blurry picture of a schnauzer, and that's their entire portfolio. And you're like, well, the ground that you have to stand on is water at best. So, you know, tip your hat and smile. I'm kind of a troll, to be honest. So I'll engage with those folks, but that's because I have a personality like this one. So
I don't know what that means. Well, you know, a lot of my style, I crop in tight to heads.
Yeah.
And I always do the brow line. I know in 3 seconds, someone in the chat,
people are going to lose
their mind.
Why didn't you show? I mean, it's just, it feels so constrained. And you're like, well, it's so funny because I wanted it to feel constrained. So cheers.
I'm like, hey, tell me which 16:9 aspect ratio movie you've watched where there's been proper headroom by your standards.
Yep.
When they're trying to connect to audience. Love it. Well, what's weird is I do that crop, but then I do the half face crop, and they love the half face. Oh, you don't need the left side, but the top. I got to know she has a skull.
Forehead.
I got to.
If you don't have a forehead, you're not human.
Like, it drives me mad. But it's funny when everyone can have a say in what you do, but it's really easy to just sit there and criticize someone.
Absolutely.
And so I think I don't want to speak for Johnny, but take a breath.
Yeah.
You weren't there when they shot it.
Yep.
You weren't there in that vibe. You weren't there, and it's not your shot.
Yep.
It is not your shot. If someone's asking for feedback, that's a different story. And be constructive, not bashing.
Yeah.
I think the people that bash are definitely compensating for
agreed.
something.
Absolutely. Yep.
That said, by the way, Plug. July 22nd, me and Daniel Norton are back doing the photo critique for you guys. It is not streamed. If you're going to be in New York, or if you are in New York, check the QR code for all the events listing. But that's kind of a thing we're trying to do, is keep the community tight by doing stuff like that.
Vic asked, so is Jonny standing or sitting right now?
You're not seeing it, but there's actually like 14 gerbils holding him up. Right
I have like 17 Apple boxes that I'm on. They put me in a high chair here in the studio.
Yeah, I'm gonna get him a lifeguard chair at some point.
I'm very nervous. I'm very high off the ground right now.
You know, I got to say though, not to say something about your height, but I bet you that takes away some sort of not anxiety, but like when we're heavily tattoos like that, if you're not 6'3" and looming.
Yeah, if I was 6'4" with my build and the tattoos, I think that it would be an imposing silhouette. So yeah.
Now they pick you up. They go
fun
like,
size.
They go like this with you. You know,
like if need be, I can just push him into a bush. You know.
Jeez. Oh my gosh, man, we are at the hour, guys.
Ranked. Wow.
So if you guys want to, if you're just finding out about Jonny, this is his Instagram. You go check it out there. Does a lot of workshops, a lot of great classes, trade shows. I've seen him at stages, but again, he's traveling around doing a lot of stuff. Make sure you stay up. He's got I think a link tree. Yeah, he's got a link tree link on his Instagram. You're not doing YouTube, are you?
Not yet. I've been getting urged to do this forever. So like I just started doing YouTube with PPA, and I think we're going to do some stuff on the Adorama channel.
Okay, cool.
Chats are happening there. So you can find me on all the channels except my own, because I'm a bad business person. We were just talking about this. Great artist, amazing artist. When it comes to the metrics, the business side, the admin side, I am less than ideal.
I have no idea what that's like, Jonny. I have no idea. And you're also doing something with Printique.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Adorama Printique, if you didn't know, Printique is the printing division of Adorama.
Print your work, print your work, print your work.
Do the spiel.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important, everyone. I think, for me, going back to that idea of like being an artist, if I start to get down on myself and I'm not feeling like an artist, I print something. Like when I can actually hold my work in my hand, it gets me out of like the zeros and ones. It gets me out of the algorithms. It brings me back to medium. It brings me back to something tactile that I can hold. So if you're not currently printing your work, print it. And I highly recommend that you print through Printique.
Also, printing helps you edit down your images and making a commitment.
Curate.
And also to what it should look like. So when you guys are looking at an image on your phone or your screen, that could be interpreted by anyone on whatever screen they're looking at.
Absolutely.
Your print, that is the final say of what you think those colors, that brightness, that exposure should look like, and the size. If it's small and intimate, or is it large for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's I think if I wasn't raised on printing my work in dark rooms and did the fine art gallery thing here in New York when I was younger, I would have a different concept of how I shoot.
It's huge. It's a really big deal.
All right, cool. Man, we're going to do it. So 5 o'clock today, if you're watching live Eastern, if you're watching this on playback, make sure you check out, this channel, Adorama Events. My man will be live. Jump in that chat. Hit subscribe. We are growing that channel. I want to get that silver play button, kids. Mishpucha, let's do this. All right. And I'm going to try to keep him in check in here. We're going to be shooting with all Flashpoint lighting. So all you guys that have been requesting more Flashpoint demos, you had Gary Hughes last night, and now we got Jonny Edward here tonight. Jonny, I want to thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been totally cool. My man showed up an hour early for this just to show you how dedicated he is. He's all in on this. And go make sure you go check him out. Guys, hit subscribe on this channel and check out the rest of the Coffee with Creators playlist. There's like 59 other guests for you to check out.
Great chat. Really great chat.
Yeah, what's going on? Let's do this. Come on.
Binge.
Throw it on while you're editing.
Yeah,
knock yourself out, all right?
Perfect.
Jonny.
It's been a pleasure.
Man. Be good. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, week,
all.
whatever. And hopefully we'll see you at 5 o'clock. And if not, hopefully you'll watch the playback. Later, guys. Be good to each other.
Later.